your scrawny ass, Johnson.
Hell, you won't be mouthing off when I've got my super suit. I'll go ninja on your ass.
Now that I'd like to see.
Okay, guys, we're entering a combat zone. A lot of SAM activity down there. I'm gonna circle around and fire countermeasures before we land.
What a polarizing time to be playing video games, man. Everybody's over here talking about the graphics in the new Halo Infinite gameplay that was just released recently, and I'm over here playing Crysis on something the size of a single sliced toaster. Yeah, that's actually something that exists, and I didn't know that until I looked it up for this video. Crysis is probably one of the most buggiest, glitchiest, poorly performing games that I have ever played on my Switch. This thing has crashed on me like 4 or 5 times within the few hours I've played it. But if you just looked at it for face value, that wouldn't be exactly fair because there's a whole lot more to it than that. Crysis is the game that came out on the PC back in 2007. It's something that I've never played, but I've definitely heard the ongoing meme behind it, and I'm sure you have as well at some point. Hey bro, can it run Crysis? Hey, can it actually run Crysis, bro? It's pretty cool. That's a new rig you got. That's can run Crysis. Crysis has always been known as this brutally demanding game that's been hard to run on PCs at the time that it came out, and as well as even on modern PCs. It had gotten a few console ports back on the PS3 and the 360, and again, I've never actually played Crysis until now, but from everything that I've seen, they weren't very good ports. And that circles back around to where we're at now with Crysis Remastered on the Switch. Interestingly enough, this is the first port of the quote-unquote remastered version of Crysis. And what did they use to showcase this new game? The most powerful console out right now, the Xbox One X. Maybe show what PCs are capable of now. No, they decided to say, fuck it, we're gonna put it on something the size of a tofu block. And I think Crysis has now completed the 3 horsemen of the powerful Nintendo Switch ports. I mean, you got Doom on the Switch, you got The Witcher on the Switch, and now you got Crysis on the Switch. Although Doom 2016 is a totally different game from this, the interesting thing about that was that it had just came out a year prior to the Switch's launch. And with a game so consistent and feature complete comparative to its console and PC counterparts, that was a very impressive port. And then there was Witcher, a game that pushed the boundaries of a modern open world title with outstanding graphics, story, and gameplay. I haven't gotten a chance to play that on the Switch myself, but it looks like a really impressive port. And then you finally have Crysis, which is an interesting game on its own because although it's almost 10 years old, 10 years older than the Switch's launch, it's still to this day a technical marvel. Not only is the new lighting elements that they've included present in the Switch port, not only is the Switch port of this game better than the PS3 and 360 port, but this goes beyond what a standard console quality game coming to a portable platform is. This was never intended to be a portable game. This was a game for all intents and purposes, a game that pushed the limits of the strongest PCs at the time. Because this game is just a big physics sandbox, and this game does something that a lot of games nowadays don't really do. And even on the Switch, there's really nothing else like it. I mean, I think there's Red Faction, which could be compared to this, but I mean, they're totally different games, especially in the graphics department. Because at times, Crysis is pushing this realistic lighting that almost makes me forget that I'm on a Switch until we hit the frame rate, but we'll talk about that. The game itself isn't completely contained in one open world, but the game plays like an open world game that you would think of today, because it offers you these massive playgrounds where you have an objective to get to, but it gives you multiple ways you can actually choose to go into the setting. It basically just gives you a bunch of tools, a bunch of paths, and it says, here, just do it however you want to do it. But obviously not only that, but one of the biggest reasons that this is so technically impressive on the Switch is that when you go into these open levels, you're greeted with a bunch of buildings that you can just completely level out. A majority of the buildings in this game are destructible, and you can just destroy them with vehicles, grenades, explosives, and they'll all just kind of realistically crumble the way you would expect them to. Normally when games do this, they go for it in more of like a abstract art style, I suppose, like Red Faction, or they go for a realistic looking game and they just don't have all of those destructible elements in them. But this game kind of retains a little bit of both. The game looks so good at times, while also offering all these things that you can destroy. Obviously this is very taxing on the Switch, and it brings it to its knees more than any other game I've played. Unlike Doom, where the frame rate is really consistent, decent, although albeit that's in a more controlled environment. This game is a game where anything can happen. No two ways are going to play out exactly the same because the game's going to have to do a lot of calculations in real time to adjust for how you're deciding to play that level, and that's something that is very taxing on hardware, especially hardware that's completely portable. Obviously, something so technically demanding coming to the Switch is going to require sacrifices, whether that's in the graphics or the frame rate or whatever it be. I know there was a mission that was outright cut from this version of the game, which I don't know anything about that mission, but hopefully I'm not missing out on too much. This game didn't sacrifice much in the way of graphics, and obviously it couldn't sacrifice those destructible elements that make up so much of the fun in this game. Honestly, I'm really shocked whenever I go through these forest levels and there's so much detail-rich foliage in it that I can't believe it made its way into the cut. So I'd say above everything else, the biggest cut came to the frame rate because damn this thing fucking chugs. Whenever a building's crumbling or you're cutting down trees, those physics calculations suck down the frame rate like a golf ball through a straw. And this pretty much applies to pretty much anything that's happening in the game, combat scenario or otherwise, because there's just constantly stuff being destroyed and falling apart and exploding, and it's just a hell of a lot on this. If this was just a simple corridor shooter, it wouldn't have been nothing to port this over. But because the game is so massive, it just struggles to keep up with it. Now, it is still completely playable, but it's definitely noticeable. But I mean, man, the game just looks so good and it's so fun to play, even in portable mode. It's just hard to say that they should have made more sacrifices to this, because you can only cut so much back before you're destroying the original vision of the game, and this retains that perfectly. So I expect there to be frame rate hiccups when a building's being destroyed or what have you, but man, things like the crashes and things like the subtle glitches and the animation, those are things that I wish could have been ironed out a little better. And even though the graphics are so good and the gameplay is so fun, you'll still notice things from the time period where this game came from that are just a little awkward in today's standards. Like when you shoot a body, it kind of ragdolls and then just freezes. The AI is kind of retarded, for a lack of a better word. It can be kind of cool when they're roaming through the forest starting to swarm in on you and you turn on that active camo and then you hit them with the sneak attack or avoid them altogether. But man, when you're doing something like you're in the middle of a firefight and he's just kind of creeping his way over to the turret even though he's completely in your line of fire, it's just kind of hilarious. There's been cutscenes where the facial animations just kind of wank out, and I just think they're hilarious. It's just kind of funny to see this mesh of graphical and technical glitches coupled with just the game being from a different time period that's so funny to me. But it's really cool to see games like this coming to the Switch. I think it's really important to prove that this is a very powerful platform given the circumstances. Could it be more powerful? Sure. But it's still definitely no slouch, and it's cool to see games like this coming to a platform, especially a Nintendo platform like the Switch. Back when I was in middle school, my PSP was basically my only console, so I would always try to find the experiences that closely resembled the console experiences close as possible. It was such a pain in the ass to try to hook up a PSP natively to play games on your TV, and it always looked kind of awkward and off, but the concept to me was always amazing. And now we're in this time period where you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can have a portable console and it can also still kind of be your main console. If you're younger or you don't have the money to just throw at every video game system out there, you can have a Nintendo Switch and it can be a great experience if you need those games on the go but also want something that you can plug up to your TV. And then you're telling me you can get games like Crysis running on it? It's pretty incredible. Overall, right now, Crysis is $30. I'd say it's kind of glitchy right now. If you're on the fence about it, maybe wait for some patches. Otherwise, if you don't care about the glitches and the occasional game crashing and the frame rate dips, just go ahead and pick it up. It's a fun time for $30. I definitely think it's worth showing that we want to support these type of titles on the Switch and support the developers' hard work that they put into bringing a game like this over to the platform. I look forward to seeing updates with this game. I look forward to seeing more games like this come make its way over to the Switch, and I think it's awesome. As always, big shout outs to the homie Xeet for supporting the Patreon. Even though my channel's so small and doesn't get any attention, nobody should ever feel obligated to do that, so your generosity is very much appreciated. If you'd like to support it as well, it's in the description. Go check it out. No pressure, no obligation. It's just there if you want to do it. I'd like to put more maybe behind the scenes stuff or just more content for Patreon supporters in general, but I'm really not sure what to do with it at this level right now. But if you want to support it, go check it out. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other Switch content and VR content. I got some video game retrospectives if that kind of stuff interests you. I even got some sim racing stuff if that interests you. So there's my sales pitch. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. It's been Big T, and I'm out.